So I am Head of Emerging Technologies at AKQA. Head of Emerging Technologies, we have a lot of architects and developers, engineers that build things. My role as Head of Emerging Technologies is actually to look at the problems that are solved by emerging technologies, the behaviors that change, the behaviors that need to change, the opportunities we can create. That's what I'm looking to do. I'm going to do that today, obviously, with voice and with Amazon Alexa, which is kind of the first of its kind. Some waving at the back. No? I'm going to continue anyway. With Amazon Alexa, first of its kind, voice in the home. The rush that happens with emerging technologies is to do something on the platform in order to look innovative, get some PR. A lot of the time that's done without an awful lot of thought into the future. So what I'm going to try and do over the next 13 minutes is to show what the impact of voice really is, how to approach it if we're starting to take our brands into voice platforms and voice in the home, and then a little look future. So I'm going to cram that in. I'd usually do that in about 45 minutes. So we'll do what we can. So we'll all remember starting around here a few years ago with Siri beginning, and we got it and we used it, and it wasn't all that. It was kind of funny, bit of a novelty, showed our friends, and then put it away because it didn't work so well. That's a few years ago now when it re-emerged, much, much better, much more sophisticated, accurate enough to use. So when Amazon ran a 2-year pilot selling Alexa in the States, at the end of that 2 years, looked to sell it everywhere else. And you can only take from that 2-year pilot was deemed to be successful. But what that means is that the behavior has become normalized. So the idea of standing in a room, talking out loud to an inanimate object that talks back is no longer considered in any way awkward or uncomfortable, which is something it certainly would have been before. And it's that enables us to do some interesting things. Google have told us some time ago that voice is on the rise in how people engage with search, and hence, obviously, them coming out with Google Home. So we can again say from this that voice is only going to expand. It's only going to get bigger. There will be more players in this game, and it will become increasingly sophisticated. So voice is not a fad or something that's a novelty. It has a real future. It's going to define a lot of things about what we do down the line. Gartner have actually told us that in 2020, 30%, a third of web browsing sessions will be done without a screen. So this is really motoring, but actually voice is about far more than search. Voice in the home particularly actually allows us to change the nature of a consumer's relationship with a brand. It's a very powerful and very subtle thing. The reason for that is this. If you're at home, or anywhere in fact, but let's say at home, and you want to know something, you want to learn something, and you decide to do it on one of these, on your mobile phone or your laptop. So you go and get your phone, and you unlock it, and you go to a browser, you fire up an app, you do whatever. That is a very conscious and deliberate decision that you make to do that. It may seem trivial, and it may only take a few seconds or microseconds, but it's a deliberate decision you take. However, if there's someone in the room with you, and you just ask them, there's no thought process involved in that. There is no decision. You just ask. It's a very casual, a very instinctive interaction to have, which is why we ask a lot of questions and get a response that we really ought to go and look it up. So introducing voice in the home introduces this casual and instinctive relationship between a person and a brand, if it's nurtured and set up correctly. So if we're looking to set up a relationship like this and give access and turn a brand into a companion in this way, then the first thing we need to do if we're looking to take our brands into these voice platforms is have a reason to do it, have a purpose. I talked about the novelty value of emerging technologies and the race to deploy things, but the key thing is to actually have something which is sustained. Doesn't have to be fully formed. A roadmap can be created from a very simple base, but that simple base has to have a reason to reuse, because that's what creates the relationship and gives you something to build from. So in the first instance, we've deployed a few skills for Amazon. We've got about 5 in development now in London and the States. The first one we did was for Jamie Oliver. Very, very simple skill, which is we're on an update pathway. But in the first instance, that conversation with Jamie Oliver was not, look at this device, you need to get on this. The conversation with Jamie Oliver is, you have a fairly well-defined audience. They live in the kitchen. This device gives you the opportunity to be present in the kitchen with your core audience all the time. And if you're a competitor, the idea of you being present with your core audience all the time is quite compelling. If we're looking at Arsenal, who we developed a skill for, it's possible to be a lifetime fan of Arsenal and never once actually touch the brand. You can buy a knockoff shirt, never go to a game, watch it on TV, never actually interact with the brand or its services or its products at all. 60,000 people can get in to the stadium. Tens of millions of fans worldwide need all the help that they can get. So with Alexa, giving them a match day experience when the game isn't on television, access to program notes, news, things like this, and then the club's own produced full-length match commentary, in this casual way, means that suddenly repeated engagements with the brand of Arsenal constantly, allowing Arsenal a channel to start communicating with their fans and engaging with them and starting to draw them in to the kind of official things that Arsenal do. Now, when we're looking at these then, and we're looking at these conversations, and we're looking at the kind of applications we can create for voice, a key thing here is what the voice is. Because voice is not just the new input method. And this is a thing that if you've tried Alexa skills, and I'm guessing a lot of you have, a lot of the frustration that can emerge is in the way that the conversation plays out. Because a lot of the skills take a good advantage of the engineering and the technology, but they just use voice as a kind of a form-filling exercise. Now I'm going to use an example here, which is slightly unfair. National Rail, I happen to know that National Rail have done what they've done for all the right reasons. Get in early, test and learn, develop, become more sophisticated. So actually, credit to National Rail, which is something I don't often say, but in this case, a good thing. But what they've got in their skill is a very form-led process. What kind of journey do you want? Your commuter or new journey? New journey. Where do you start? Shoreham by Sea. Is that Shoreham by Sea? Yes. Where do you end? London Victoria. Is that London Victoria? Yes. At the end of this process, feel slightly angry. There's nothing wrong with the technology. Nothing wrong at all. And as I say, they're doing the right things for the right reasons. It's going to improve. That's why they're doing it. You kind of get the idea. So voice, there we go. It's the user experience. And we need to think about it in those terms. So really good user experience architects, really good designers need to create these interactions. What can we do to create good user experiences when we're looking to bring our brands into voice? Well, the first thing is, how many ways can you enter into a conversation? If you have to start at the top and go through the entire checklist of information, that's tedious, and it doesn't feel very human, particularly for repeated interactions. So if we're looking at calling back to Jamie Oliver, then you can start at the top with open Jamie Oliver and go through the exercise. Or you can actually ask Jamie Oliver for something reasonably specific and jump over several levels of this and enter the conversation part way through. So ask Jamie Oliver for a pasta recipe with chicken, for example. Very basic example, but it gets you into the conversation in more different ways and gives you more flexibility. How much information do you provide? And what I mean here is how much information do you provide in one statement. So in looking at the National Rail example, one question, one piece of information, one question, one piece of information. Again, if we call back to Jamie Oliver, a response you might get is, why not try the spaghetti bolognese? It has tomato, beef, and mushrooms. It takes 30 minutes, and it's super easy. That's actually 4 distinct pieces of information drawn together in one statement. The reason for that is working out how much information people need to move on without having to jump around, and without having a very jumpy conversation. So it's understanding the flow of conversation. How do we deal with fallbacks? Quite often we could say something that Alexa doesn't understand. How do we deal with that? Gracefully, providing some actionable opportunities at the end of it. Didn't understand. Do you want to do this or this or this? Or just does not compute. So how we deal with things we don't understand is just as important as dealing with things we do understand. And then how can we keep the conversations fresh? If we're talking about something sustainable we want people to come back to, then clearly we need to keep those conversations fresh and have something surprising, even delightful in there. Again, can be very, very light touch. Again, going back to Jamie Oliver, we actually use Jamie Oliver's voice recordings in some of the recipes, which is always a surprise, and if you like Jamie Oliver, might even be a delight. But it's just about, again, understanding the emotional resonance of the conversations you have, even while the technology itself right now is quite limited in our control of these things. There are lots of things we can do to humanize these conversations, because everything that we do, everything we say, and every response we get says something about our brand. We used to say, there was a phrase a few years back, the interface is the brand. Well, this is our interface. What does that actually mean in this context? What is the brand when there is no visual asset at all? Well, it's fairly straightforward to say that it's tone of voice. That should be self-evident. Everything that we say and how we say it, how it responds, reflects on the brand and our impressions of it. Tone of voice right now comes down to knowing the brand, having really good copywriters, having really good conversation designers, but it's not just going to stop there. Tone of voice is going to mean more and more as the technology becomes increasingly sophisticated. So, for example, it's already possible to detect different voices. And if you can detect different voices, if you can tell the adults from the children, for example, it's possible to craft different content so that responses are different between these two different types of people. MIT published some research to show that they can detect an emotional state from the voice. We do this as humans all the time. We understand what emotional state people are in when they speak to us. Computers find this hard, but it's coming, which again means we can craft responses that suit the emotional state of the people who are talking to us as brands. It's even possible to create content that speaks to individuals in exactly the way those individuals want to be spoken to. And actually, to say how close this is, we can more or less do this now. So, on the screen that most of you probably can't see, I don't know if you can see it down there, but there's a service called Crystal. Crystal's an AI platform. They ran a free service where you could put someone's name in, it would find them on LinkedIn, and then using only the paragraph they'd written about themselves on LinkedIn, it would give you a reasonably high-level personality breakdown. This is someone I work with at AKQA, I know them very well, so I can vouch for it. And it talks about their motivations and things they want to do using this very small piece of information. It gets more interesting because it talks about how to communicate with this person. In this case, stick to the big picture, be informal, let him take the lead, etc., etc. Even down to how do we build a relationship with this person. This is of a very small amount of text, typically about 1,000 words. This is information that we can get from conversation. If you can start to understand how people want to be spoken to as individuals, again, content can be tailored to speak to different types of people in the ways that engage with them the most. So we're moving to a stage where conversation, voice, however and wherever it happens, is a true one-to-one experience. No more segmentation or generalization. It's one-to-one experience. So we can see that this is going to happen pretty fast because we can already do it. It's only a question of it actually reaching the mainstream, APIs becoming available, doing it in applications, but this is very much the roadmap. And if we end, this is an image obviously from the film Her. It didn't have the most positive of endings, but then most films about artificial intelligence end with the destruction of the human race, so it wasn't the worst. But we can see what he's got here is the earpiece. Alexa isn't going to stay as this plastic object that sits in the kitchen. It's already the idea is that Alexa is a service that gets embedded into products, into environments. It becomes part of the world around us. At CES a couple of years ago, automotive showing having Alexa embedded in the cars. These earpieces are coming, hearables are coming our way. So this idea that we will be able to have voice and conversation as our access to brands in a one-to-one method is going to happen. It's going to happen over the next few years. So hopefully, over these 15 minutes, hopefully I haven't overrun by too much, we can see how important it is to set it up right, have the right kinds of conversation in sustainable reasons, and then give ourselves a platform to drive forward into this kind of future. Thank you very much.